Hi, I'm Janet Fairley. I'm the current president of the Society for Investigative Dermatology, and I'm here today with Dr. Mark Udey and Dr. Russ Hall, the editors of the JID's journals, the JID and the JID Innovations. And we're here today to ask some interesting questions that I think you all, as members of the SID, may have about these two new journals. So thank you, Mark and Russ, for being here to talk today. I think the first question is, what was the impetus at this time for creating a new journal in the JID family?
Well, Janet, it's been a very interesting time in publications, scientific publications specifically. And for those who follow the field or are interested, I'm sure they've heard of the battles between the University of California and publishers and what access to journals articles going to be. And there's the need to get the open access has become an increasingly prominent part of the discussion. And this development of open access journals has gone to the point where certain payers in Europe and in the United States, the Gates Foundation, the Wellcome Foundation, are requiring that if you publish an article, it needs to be published in a totally open access journal. So that open access drive, which is basically to allow the work that's being funded by agencies or by the governments of all the countries that support us, to think that this information must be available free, quickly, and readily to the entire population, whether it's the scientific population, the public, to other funders, in an unrestricted way, has really put a significant stretch on what subscription journals could do. And the concern is that subscription journals may not be able to survive this, or will survive it in a much different form. And the SID and the ESDR working together thought that this would be a good time for their societies to get together to form an open access journal that would address these questions and provide a good forum for all the investigators interested in skin biology and dermatology to publish their findings in a way that is open and accessible to the entire population.
So if you're publishing in JID Innovations, that material is going to be available as soon as it's accepted for publication. Is that correct?
It will be available online as soon as it's accepted. And not only that, it will be available to anyone, whether your university has a subscription to the JID or not, whether you're a member of the society or not, whether you live in a country that has limited subscriptions in your journals, in your library, you will be able to get it. Anyone who can have internet connection will be able to access that information. And so it is totally open. And it's open both to, as I said before, both to the public so that they have access to the research they pay for, as well as to anybody in the scientific community, whether they have a subscription, whether they don't, whether they're a member of the SID and ESDR or whether they're not. From the moment it's published, it's open access.
Right. All right. So, Mark, is there a difference in scope between the JID that we all know and the new journal?
So maybe before we talk about that, let me comment on the open access as it relates to the JID, Janet, because I want people to have a good understanding of that as well. So JID is a subscription journal. And so that means that all the content that's published in the journal is immediately available to all subscribers, be they institutional subscribers or personal subscribers. Material that's published in the JID also becomes available to everyone 1 year after its initial publication. And it can be made totally open access or gold open access also, but that requires that authors pay an additional publication fee. So although it's not routinely the way it happens, it is possible for an author to have their material published immediate open access also. It's just, it requires an additional fee.
Okay.
Now, with regard to the scope of the journal, so as you know, investigative dermatology and skin biology is a very, very broad field. And the goal of the JID is to publish the results of research that's basically conducted by all of the members of the SID and the ESDR, the two societies that JID serves as the official journal for. And so we publish, clinical as well as laboratory-based research in the form of original articles, letters, invited reviews and perspectives, meeting reports, and others. What we don't publish typically, and I use the word typically because there are always exceptions, we don't typically publish descriptions of methods that don't also report important scientific discoveries. We don't publish case reports, and we don't publish as a routine things that are purely descriptive, and we also don't really publish correspondence. So those are areas where we would not publish.
Okay. So Russ, then, are there elements of what Mark has described as not being routinely published in the JID, or things that are particularly interesting to JID Innovations?
I think there are, yes, there are, and they come in two forms. The first thing that is important to remember is that an open access journal is an entirely online journal. Mm-hmm. So we are not limited by page limitations for publication. We are not limited. For instance, we will not necessarily have to have supplemental data. People can have articles and figures and length of manuscripts that's important for their topic, without regards to a restriction regarded to page charges or anything of that, or not charges, but page length or anything of that nature. So that's one important difference that allows us to expand our scope to things that are of important and interest to the community, but may not rise to the level that is suitable for the JID. So for instance, we take as our main criteria, is the question a question that's important to our community? Is it a question that is of interest to investigators, to the public, that they would like to have the answer to? Is it done in a thoughtful and important and critical way? Are the methods suitable to answer the question? And is the interpretation and the analysis correct? And if that's the case, it doesn't really matter to us what the answer is. If the answer refutes the initial question, that is, if it was a negative study, we still are interested. We think negative studies are very important and can help advance the field. If the study is conflicting with an article that's already been published, we think that's important. We think conflicting information can increase our knowledge about the field and can help drive things forward. So that allows us to have a quite broader scope. And that includes, we're interested in smaller studies that may answer very particularly observational points that might not be sufficient to totally answer the question, but might be very important on the path to getting the final answer. So negative studies that are somewhat incomplete, smaller investigative clinical trials that may not have a generalizable result, but may be very important in driving a larger trial that could answer the question definitively. So we are very interested in methods. So a person that has a new method that's never been used in dermatology before, publishing that method would be fine with us. If it doesn't have a particularly dermatology study attached to it, but the dermatology investigative community would like to hear about it, we would like to publish it. So those are some of the differences in scope. Other sort of subtle differences are that we are interested in things that, for instance, our review articles, we're asking all of our individuals that are submitting review articles to not only tell us where the world has been and not only tell us where the world is now for this particular subject, but suggest us where that we should go. What are the new questions that need to be answered? What are the new areas that need to be explored? What are the gaps in our knowledge that we have? And so we are able to allow perhaps a little more looking forward in some of the reviews, and are willing to do that. And as a part of the open access and the online publication nature of it, it gives us we have the liberty to not be confined or contained by things such as page limits or the number of pages that can be actually published, since we are entirely all online. So I think that we have a broader scope. We're interested, like we said, the other thing one of our mottos is from skin biology, from molecules to population health. So we would like to sort of cover the entire span, and just as the JID does, cover clinical studies as well as laboratory-based studies, but perhaps be open to slightly more narrow questions, slightly more advanced understanding of the questions, but most importantly, we think if the field needs to have this question answered, then it is in our scope. And so that allows us a lot of freedom and a lot of things to be brought onto the stage that may not be suitable for a journal, a subscription journal such as the JID.
So the JID and JID Innovations are sister journals, or they've been called sister journals. Can you guys elaborate on the relationship between the two journals?
Sure. So I think the first point to make is that it's very important that everyone understand that basically the editorial decisions and the decisions about content in the two journals are made entirely independently.
Yeah.
Russ and I have a very good personal and working relationship, but we do not, collaborate to make editorial decisions about content or anything like that. And the editorial boards are entirely distinct. I think that's important because some of the funding agencies that have pushed for open access have required that be true of total open access journals. And administratively, we share a manuscript document, a software platform called Scholar One that we both use to handle manuscripts, which basically enables relatively easy transfer of manuscripts from one journal to another. And so, for example, currently, if authors are interested, we are, if they papers for one reason or another not accepted for publication in the JID, the authors would be offered the opportunity to have it considered by JID Innovations. That wouldn't necessarily mean that JID Innovations would be interested in that article, and certainly wouldn't have access to the article unless the authors gave permission. But if the authors were interested in it, then it could be potentially communicated to JID Innovations with a minimal effort on the part of authors.
So if they gave permission, it could be almost directly transferred from the JID to JID Innovations.
Yes, that's correct. Russ, do you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, I think that this is a very attractive part of the process for the JID Innovations, and that is when the authors feel that it is appropriate, they can simply almost click a link and the articles are immediately transferred. And there's no reformatting that needs to be done. There's no resubmission. There's no submission fee for submitting an article to JID Innovations. It's transferred directly from JID to JID Innovations. Then it's looked at by the editor, by myself, and we deem whether this might be an area of interest to our readers. And if it is, then we send it out for peer review, just as in a regular journal system. So the other interesting thing about the transfer process is that this transfer process, while not as seamless and as easy as it is from the JID to the JID Innovations, also holds true for other journals. If you happen to submit a journal to, for instance, the Journal of Clinical Investigation, and that's not appropriate, and you would think that it might be appropriate for JID Innovations, you can simply submit us the same manuscript in whatever format you put it in for that first journal and submit it to us. And this is a feature we call Your Paper, Your Way. We are happy to review papers, and it doesn't matter for us whether as long as it has an abstract, an introduction, materials and methods, results and discussion, and a bibliography with figures and tables as needed, that's fine. Which order they're put it in, how the references are suited, that doesn't matter for the review process. We will bring it in, we'll review it. If we want to publish it, we will then ask you to modify it to fit our format. But until then, to get into the process, it's your paper, your way. And I think that that's a nice, novel way to streamline the process of getting things into press faster. We want to innovate the way they're handled. We want to innovate the way they can get into publication, and hopefully innovate their appearance quickly to the scientific community.
Sure. I mean, I would think that would be attractive. That along with the no submission fee, should be appealing, I think, to authors.
I mean, the JID also has some flexibility about initial formatting for submission, but perhaps not quite as widely flexible as Russ has articulated.
Yeah. Is there anything else I haven't asked you guys about that you think that our membership would really like to hear about?
Well, I think there's one thing that always comes up, and that everybody knows the saying, there's no free lunch. And even though we don't have a submission fee, we still have to find the money to run a website and to do all the running of the materials and have the editorial office. And so there is a publication fee for journals, for articles in the JID Innovation. That publication fee is only paid upon acceptance. There's no, as we said, no submission fee. So it's only after the article is accepted. And for members of the ESDR and the SID, that publication fee is $1,500, a flat fee. Doesn't matter how many pages, how many figures, any of that. And it's $2,000 for people that aren't members of the SID or the ESDR. And we feel that that's an important thing to know, because open access journals, all of them have publication fees of a certain amount. This is a very reasonable publication fee if you look at other open access journals, but there is a fee involved. But as we said, it's a one-time flat fee that only comes up after the article's been accepted.
Right. Anything else you'd like to?
I think another question that not infrequently comes up when I have conversation with SID or ESDR members is our JID and JID Innovations going to be competitive journals? Are they going to compete with each other for the same content?
That's a good question.
And if I were a member, I would want to ask that question also. And I think the answer is not by design. The idea is that they will be complementary rather than competitive. But I think it is likely that there will be areas where there is overlapping interest in content, and on some level potentially some competition for content. And I think it's probably unavoidable. And I also think that it's healthy. And in the end, I think, JID Innovations will define itself through its identity in large part, I think, by the quality or the kind of content that it attracts. And then we will ultimately see, to what extent are the journals going to compete with each other.
One additional thing that I would like to, I think Mark makes an excellent point there's a lot of similarities. And one area where we are very similar is peer review. And it's important to realize that we are a peer review journal. We are accepting articles only after they've gone through a strict peer review process. That we will have essentially 2 reviewers for each article, an associate editor and the editorial review. So this is what we are trying to do is make sure that we have the highest quality articles. They may have a slight difference in scope, but the quality and the scientific integrity of the articles is our highest and most important touchstone. Now, the interesting part about what we do is we're not limited in terms of what we publish in some of the other respects that a subscription journal is. But where we don't differ from them is the need for very stringent and very, very rigorous peer review, as that will be a part of our process too. And I think that is something that must be remembered, that even though we're going to have open access and there's a lot of things that we don't need from people, we will have peer review, and authors may experience some of the same frustrations that you experience in any peer review process. And we will expect revisions, and all of those things are part of what's going on. But the other aspects of the difference in scope are where the difference can come in.
Yeah. So in thinking about that, what are the metrics you guys are going to use to measure the success of the JID Innovations, and also to make sure that both of them are continuing with strong success?
Well, our first metric, and one of the important things for people to remember, is that we are well on the way. We have published our first quote unquote issue, although it is a virtual issue that came out in April. And the way that journals are structured these days is that indexing the journal becomes, after you have 25 articles published, you then get them indexed on PubMed. So one of our measures of success is getting that. And we feel we are very close to being at that point already. And hopefully we'll be, by May or June, have sufficient articles to get indexed on PubMed. And all articles will be indexed. This is one question that's come up. They said, well, if you're indexing starting in June, will the articles you published in April and May first edition not be indexed? And the answer is no, they will be indexed. And so that's one of the first criteria. One of the criteria we probably won't use as much as the JID to judge success is the impact factor. And that's because of the nature of what it is, we expect to publish a large number of articles, and we may have a slightly less impact factor because it's based on how many, it's a ratio of references over how many articles published. And if we publish a lot of articles, the impact factor may be slightly different. So we expect to have a good impact factor, but that won't be available for us we won't be able to have that for several years. But that is one way we will be different. But we expect to be respectable in that regard, and the quality of the journal, and the quality of submissions will obviously be one of our touchstones for judging success.
Right. So the JID obviously is an established journal with a long track record at this point. So we have a number of metrics that we follow, have followed, and will follow. We receive on the order of 1,000 submissions a year, and we're having a continued activity in that regard. We do follow downloads and page views, and now that much of access is digital rather than looking at the print version, and despite people's acknowledgement that impact factor is not the be all and end all of quality metrics, it is important to a number of our members, and so we do follow that. The impact factor has been above 7 now for the last year or so, and we're looking forward to maintaining that and increasing it if possible, since it is something that's very important, perhaps more for our European colleagues than for our colleagues in the US.
Right. Well, I really appreciate both of you taking your time to talk with us about the journals today. For the members, if during the meeting, if you have any other questions for Mark or Russ, you can go on to the JID's chat room, and they have an area there for questions on the meeting platform. And please feel free, upload any of your questions to both of our authors here. There's a separate area for the JID and the JID Innovations, and we're looking forward to many more years of publications of 2 great journals.
Thank you, Janet. It's been great to have a chance to speak with you today.
Yes, thanks, Janet. And for people at this meeting, there will also be additional publication with a slide presentation for each of the journals that can detail some of these factors and bring them up again. And again, please feel free to reach out to either of us through our email accounts on our web pages and our home pages, JID Innovations and JID. We look forward to hearing from our audience and our collaborators and our colleagues as we work to make this new publication as strong as it possibly can be.
Yeah, just to echo Russ's comments, both of these journals are society journals, meaning that they're owned by the societies and not the publishers. And the JID, anyways, has been successful over the years in large measure because of the support of the SID and ESDR membership as authors, as reviewers, as editors, and as readers. And so we hope for your continued support.